Dr. Kyndall Brown, who is the Executive Director of the California Mathematics Project. And today he's going to share with us some of the work that they've been doing for the past few years. So,
thank you. All right, nice to be here.
Good, I'm so glad you could make it. All right, so tell us about the California Mathematics Project.
So the California Mathematics Project is a statewide network of professional development organizations.
Okay.
We're housed at both CSU and UC campuses. I have 18 sites across the state, and each site is its own kind of organization that brings together mathematicians, math educators, and classroom teacher leaders to provide professional and leadership development for K-12 teachers of mathematics.
Okay.
The focus is on implementing the California Mathematics Framework and Standards. We're also mandated to work with low-performing schools and districts. There's a strong equity focus, and so we're trying to make sure that all students have access to high-quality mathematics instruction. And so we carry out our work in a number of different ways. We have summer institutes that many of the sites either host on their campuses, their institutions, or they work with county offices of education and school districts, and sometimes offer the institutes in districts or schools. And then we also contract out with schools, so schools will have a particular need or agenda that they'd like addressed in the area of mathematics, so they'll come to one of our sites and ask them to do professional development. And then we also write grants to partner with schools and districts. So there's a number of different ways that we work with schools and offer services to them.
So if schools low on funding, one of the ways to work and get some professional development might be to write a grant.
That's one way. Another way is to really think, all schools now have what they call the LCAP, the local control funding formula funds at their school. And so we encourage schools to really think about, as they're writing these plans, to write professional development into the plans, and that's another way that they can use the funding, the annual funding that they get to support.
Gotcha. And when they go with you, they know that they're going to get quality.
Absolutely.
Right. I love it. So what does your day-to-day look like?
It can be varied. I can be doing professional development myself. I can be out in the field visiting one of my sites. I'm also involved in a variety of statewide meetings. The Math Project is one of 9 subject matter projects. We have them in language arts, foreign language, history, social studies, science, the arts, physical education, international studies. And so I meet often with the other executive directors of those projects to talk about how, the work, working together, and, how our work. We partner with a lot of the different projects throughout the state on different projects, and so that's a part of it. Also on different state committees, looking at math education as well. And so a lot of things. I have an advisory board that I have to meet with on a regular basis. Various things that I get to.
So what's your favorite part about working with the California Mathematics Project?
I think it is being able to meet with leaders across the state to find out the commonalities and differences. I love being able to go visit my sites during their summer offerings, or even if it's during the school year, to kind of see how different sites are handling the issues of mathematics education in their context. It's interesting to see how diverse this state is. I mean, a lot of us maybe who live in the cities think about, education in terms of large school districts, but you have a lot of rural districts across the state where you have 1 or 2 teachers in an entire school, and that represents, the district. So what does it mean to provide professional development for teachers in those settings?
Right.
So that is one of the really interesting parts of the job. And getting across the state to talk to teachers, find out what their concerns are, and what we can do to support them. It's very interesting.
Is there a commonality in terms of concerns, or are those concerns diverse as well?
I think there are a lot of commonalities concerned. A lot of it is around building teacher content and pedagogical knowledge. I think the issue of students who are learning English in mathematics is a challenge across the state
Sure.
that a lot of people have to deal with. Funding is always an issue. How do we carry out the work given limited funding? I think the challenge for the last several years has really been on the implementation of the Common Core standards.
They're tough.
Yes.
They really are.
Yeah, and it, I would think that my observations is that the majority of the teachers still aren't. Their teaching still hasn't aligned to the Common Core standards, right?
Right.
Whether or not they're using a textbook that's supposedly Common Core aligned.
Right.
When you take a look at what's actually happening in the classroom, it's not happening. And so it's really, a lot of the work is bringing teachers up to speed and building their skills so that they can successfully implement the Common Core standards.
Right. That's big work, right? And
Yes.
There's these textbooks that are out, curriculum, and it says Common Core, but what does that mean? I mean, they look a lot like the ones that were in schools when I was there.
Right.
I feel like what the difference is what the teachers are doing with that material,
Mhm.
right? And then that's where all the training comes in.
Right, and it's not just about the content, because there have been some changes in what teachers are expected to teach at each grade level.
Sure.
It's those mathematical practices.
I would agree.
Right, that's, I think, the big challenge for teachers. How do they really engage students in those ways when they never learned?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't learn those ways, and so they have to first learn what it means for them, and then how do they interpret that into successful instruction for the students?
I think the challenge with that is that teachers have this hesitancy to be vulnerable and not know everything, because they're teachers. They're supposed to know everything, right? So I think it's digging in, getting your hands dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing we would expect for kids. There's this learning before knowing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Same thing with teachers. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to learn.
Yeah, and teachers need to take the time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teachers don't value professional development for whatever reason. Maybe
Sure.
they've had very negative experiences, or they just haven't had opportunities to engage in really productive professional development. So they feel like they can do everything on their own, and
Mm-hmm.
or if they're not successful, a lot of times they'll blame the students
Mm-hmm.
and say it's their fault, instead of
Right.
really having a repertoire of strategies and materials that they can use to develop students' mathematical.
I think I might have been strange in that way, where I felt like if the kids weren't getting it, how could I better improve myself and my practices?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. But also, to speak to that end of it, I know that there's been years and hours I've spent in not very good professional development.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So
We have to acknowledge that's
Right.
the reality, and that might be what's coloring people's opinions. And one of the things that we've always found in the math project is that people always will compliment us on how different our professional development is. Because I think we really try to listen to teachers. We try to assess what their needs are, and not by guessing, but by asking them.
Right.
And then designing professional development that's going to meet their needs, but also helping grow.
Right, definitely. I mean, I fell in love with math through the math project because I felt like it was more of a conversation, and we were learning together, as opposed to you giving me this lecture and this list of things to do. So, would you say that that's the biggest challenge for your day-to-day work? Is that how do you convey this knowledge to teachers and get them to implement it? Or
That is a challenge,
Okay.
particularly in the context of traditional professional development, where that institute model, where we're holding something, you come to us, we teach you. It's kind of hit and miss, right? I think it has to do with that perspective of the teacher that you were just describing, because I was the same way. If my students didn't get something, I didn't say, "Oh, what's wrong with them?" I was like, "Wow, what can I do differently?"
Sure.
And so I sought out professional development to improve my practice. And so I think there are people like that who are going to go to a professional development offering, soak it up, take it back, do everything, try. If it doesn't work, try again, right? And then there's other people who will kind of go back and slide back into their traditional practices. I think if it's job embedded, if it's at the work site, it's working with teachers in their classrooms to support their implementation, to give them a safe space to try and fail and try again.
Absolutely.
I think that has a better chance of changing teacher practice.
In the classroom.
In the classroom.
Teachers often say, I want to see it with my kids, I'm a visual learner.
Right.
Definitely. So what else are some challenges you might face, or some things that you're trying to grow?
Well, I mean, I've always been someone who's been very interested in issues of access and equity, and
Okay.
making sure that all students have access to high quality mathematics. Because what the data shows is, as we start to look at schools that are lower income or have a higher percentage of African American and Latino students, that the performance in mathematics tends to be less of that with students in more affluent neighborhoods and predominantly white and Asian students, right?
Okay.
And so a lot of my work has been really trying to explore what can be done. When we take a look again at the data, we see that lower income schools that are predominantly non-white tend to have fewer resources in terms of, curricular resources. They tend to have the least experienced teachers.
Okay.
And students have less access to the higher level mathematics. And so we've really got to make sure that resources get directed to those schools, and that we make sure that we put the most qualified teachers in those schools. And so those teachers need, to me, the most support, the most professional development in order to make sure that they're meeting, and the most resources to make sure that they're meeting the needs of those students.
I myself was a teacher in an inner city Title I school. I think it was 100% free and reduced lunch. A lot of the schools where I work are very much the same. And what I notice, and I work in high affluent areas as well as Title I schools, something I notice is that the Title I school teachers, a lot of them, not all of them, are very hardworking. They're very dedicated. They really want to do the best for their kids. And then I notice sort of in maybe more affluent areas, there's not even as much classroom time. There's a lot of time outside of the classroom. So it seems as though students in more affluent areas might have more enrichment. But a conversation I was having with teachers once is, if you're in a Title I school where maybe the parents are an English language learner, a couple of jobs, the teacher really represents like 99% of the formal education. If they're going to get it, they're going to get it from the teacher. Whereas in a more affluent area, you might be learning from your parents and whatnot. And I find that really hard to balance. I think that's a myth, that maybe inner city school teachers are not as hardworking or as knowledgeable.
Right. And one of the things that we've got to do is to think about in those more less affluent areas, how do we partner with families and communities to support the mathematics instruction? Because I would argue that those parents who might be working multiple jobs are still engaging in mathematics or different kinds of activities that they could share with their students, their children, to help build their mathematical reasoning and understanding, but they may not be aware of it, and be able to label it, and as well as cultural traditions and activities that can be used to bring the students in and help support their mathematical understanding and development. But that's not something, again, I think in more affluent areas, that's more built into the nature of the school. When you have, parents, you may have a parent who doesn't work and who's able to come to the school and support. And they can bring that kind of community understanding and support into the school. It may not be as easy to do.
So I feel like what I'm hearing you say is that in maybe more affluent areas, the school culture mirrors the home culture, right? There's constant communication, interaction. I think parents are very good at advocating for their kids, right? Whereas in maybe Title I schools, the culture of the school and the home are not as intertwined.
No, and it's not, I've seen research that shows that in lower income areas, that even the relationship between the school and parents is very different, right? It's not as welcoming an environment, or the kinds of activities that parents are allowed to participate in are very prescribed. Cultural activities, or supporting fundraising for this particular activity or something, as opposed to having an impact on instruction and really questioning their students' performance and what can be done to improve it, right? There are certain parameters that parents are kind of not allowed, or if they take that position in a lower income school, they're considered troublemakers, where it's kind of the expectation in a more affluent school for parents to come and, make demands and
Right.
things of that sort. So.
Right. So and something I've experienced myself is, and it's a wondering I've had, is perhaps when we're working in lower income Title I schools, sometimes yes, sometimes no, it's a generalization, but perhaps those parents didn't have the best school experiences themselves, so they're hesitant to even go.
Right.
It could even be a little traumatic for
Yes.
some, I'm guessing.
Right.
And so what I'm hearing is if we can make them feel welcomed, that's a better chance of improving communication.
Yes, make them feel welcome and also invite them into the instructional process.
Okay.
Right? So one of my sites in Northern California at Sonoma State
Okay.
Has been engaged in lesson study
Okay.
over the last, they had a grant that they've been involved in the last several years, and they were working with elementary school students, and they were using makers tasks as a way to engage them. And at the culminating event for the year, they did a public lesson where they invited teachers. I was able to attend. They invited parents as well. It was a Saturday, so parents brought their children, and they were able to observe this public lesson where their students were very actively engaged and talking mathematically and thinking mathematically. And it was such a revelation to the parents. There was a translator there because many of the students were second language learners, so there was a translator there who was helping to, translate and taking their comments and answering questions. And parents were saying things like, my daughter never talks at home.
Right.
I never knew that she was engaging in math in this way, right? And so bringing them into that experience so they can kind of see how they get to see their children in a different light, right? In an academic light, helps the parents to, be more connected to the school. And so I think things like that really, that's a very different way as opposed to having them come and set up, the refreshments for the PTA.
Sure, right, yeah, of course.
This is getting them involved in the instruction and knowing what's happening academically.
Right, and seeing the possibilities for their children,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Oh, I love that. Sonoma, that seems interesting. It seems like it's the tale of two cities.
Yes,
right?
it's actually Santa Rosa. So Santa Rosa, my site is at Sonoma State.
Okay.
And so, so it's kind of a partnership with like Santa Rosa City Schools, and then our math project site at Sonoma State, and then the Sonoma County Office of Education.
Because you have a lot of agricultural and migrant workers,
That's correct.
but then you have a lot of vineyard owners.
Exactly.
I don't know. I like diversity in a school, right? Because I think you learn so much from one another.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Okay, so these are some good takeaways. I mean, as I'm talking, light bulbs are going off for me. It's like making sure that parents feel welcome and making sure that they have opportunities to see their kids in a different light. And recognizing that I know everybody wants the best for their kids.
Absolutely.
Right? And maybe the way we go about it looks and sounds a little different, but the intention is there. So I think maybe there's sometimes a little bit of a culture shock if you've grown up in an affluent area, maybe you graduated from college, have multiple degrees, as opposed to maybe you did or didn't finish high school and you're from a different country. Learning how we both want the same things, but how do we say that in a way, right? And I'm just thinking about interactions sometimes I see between teachers and kids, and how can we sort of lower that defense mechanism on both parts, right? Of the kids and the teachers? Because I think sometimes students might do things that seem disrespectful, but are really, it's just them being them. Right?
Well, I think a teacher has to really take the time to build relationships with their students, to really get to know them, who they are, what their background is, what their family life is like, and really have a more holistic understanding of who that child is. Now, I know that's probably a lot easier at the elementary level than it is at the secondary level. But there are ways to do it, and I think ways that can even incorporate mathematics, like data collection at the beginning of the year, finding out, what month you were born in, how old you are, what's your favorite color, all these kinds of things, what's your favorite food, all these different things that you can, then collect data, analyze it, graph it, have discussions about those kinds of things. And then, I know there are schools that make home visits, right?
Right.
And get to know parents in authentic kinds of ways to know really what's going on in families. And then taking that information and incorporating it into the instruction, right?
Right. I can see that, right? If you know about their home life, if you're writing word problems, you can integrate that into the word problems, right? If we're writing about stories rather than writing about this abstract thing, I feel bad. I used to tell kids, oh, write about your bedroom. And they're like, I don't have a bedroom. I was like, oh,
right.
I should probably have asked. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the Common Core standards require the standards for mathematical practice require students to model with mathematics. The SMP number 4 is model with mathematics,
Yes.
right? And so that means engage students in real world kinds of activities and translate that into mathematics.
Okay.
Then at the high school level, they're supposed to engage in mathematical modeling, is where they take a real world situation and mathematize it. A real world situation that doesn't have some kind of standard solution that the quadratic formula isn't going to solve.
Okay.
They're going to have to think about what are all the variables, what are all the constraints, and how do I devise a solution to this problem, do some calculations, and then check to see if my calculations actually answer my question.
Okay.
If they do, then I'm done. If not, then I need to go back and go through that process. And so if students are going to be asked to do that, there are a lot of real world situations that they're dealing with. We just had this really bad hurricane in Houston, Texas. Another one's headed, our way. What kinds of mathematical, that's a real world situation.
Right.
What kind of mathematics can be used to study that situation, right?
Right. That's definitely a rich situation.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. So.
Right. I love talking to you. I do. I learn much, but I feel like we can really get into it. But if somebody wanted to talk to you in person or learn more about you, where could they go?
Okay, so my phone number, I'm housed at UCLA in the Graduate School of Education and Information Studies, Moore Hall, Office 2030.
Oh, wow.
Just come knock on the door.
Okay.
My phone number is area code 310-794-9885.
Wow, you're accessible.
And my email address is kbrown@gseis.ucla.edu.
Now, I know, too, that I've gotten to see you speak in public a few times. Are you going to be speaking anywhere in the next few months, or?
I'm going to be speaking at the NCTM Innovate Conference in Las Vegas.
Oh, that's fun.
Going to be speaking there. I'm going to be speaking.
Wait, when's that one? In November?
That is November, I think, 15th through the 17th at the Rio Hotel.
Okay.
And then I'm going to be speaking at the California Math Council Southern Section Conference in Palm Springs. That's like the last weekend in October.
Okay.
And then also at the CMC North Conference in Asilomar in December, first weekend in December.
Which is beautiful.
Yes.
It's beautiful.